Tom Stoppard. At 88, the curtain falls. This morning, November 29, 2025, Tom Stoppard, the greatest dramatist of his generation and perhaps of the entire post-war English language, passed away quietly at his Chelsea home. He was 88. Sir Tom passed away quietly in his sleep, surrounded by family and books, exactly as he would have written it. A straightforward yet elegant statement from his agents at United Agents verified the news. Although the reason of death has not been disclosed, people closest to him claim that he passed away following a brief private illness that he refused to disclose even to friends. Playwright David Hare recounted this afternoon, his voice breaking. "He told me last week, if it has to have a Latin name, let it wait until I'm no longer around to pronounce it. If you knew him, you would know that he would have written the scene himself. A calm morning in Chelsea with sunlight streaming in through the windows, a cold cup of tea on the bedside table, and a notebook still open to a partially completed sentence. Then he asked for more tea and wanted to argue about whether Hamlet really is mad in Act 5. No last soliloquy, no fanfare. Just the gentle conclusion of a book he had spent his entire life writing. On November 29, 2025, he died in his sleep following a brief sickness that he would not even disclose to his closest friends. With that signature glint, he informed his son Will the week prior, "Let's call it a plot twist. And don't give the audience any spoilers." Although the cause was never made public, people who witnessed him in his last months described a slow fading, a heart that had been racing with thoughts for 8 decades eventually deciding to rest. He had been moving more slowly, but he had never stopped. He was taking notes even from his armchair, arguing over the phone with his editor about punctuation, and maintaining that the final word was more important than the final breath. Tom Stoppard dedicated his life to finding the ideal phrase, the ideal concept, or the ideal joke concealed behind a tragedy. Born in Czechoslovakia as Tomáš Straussler, he became a superpower by learning English as a second language. By the time he was 29, he had rewritten Hamlet from the viewpoint of 2 confused bit players. He had come in England at the age of 9, speaking with an accent that he quickly erased like a secret. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead was a revolution rather than merely a play. What if we are all merely supporting characters in someone else's narrative? Standing ovations, Tony Awards, and a career of copycats who could never quite match his humor were the world's response. He wrote on everything. The Holocaust in Leopoldstadt, science in Arcadia, love in the real thing, revolution in travesties, and history in the Coast of Utopia. He made philosophy humorous, heartbreak comic, and ideas seductive. Without ever requesting credit, he brought brilliance to Indiana, Jones and Star Wars, and polished Shakespeare in love to Oscar gold on screen. He coached a generation of writers who now occupy the theaters he constructed, directed once, and turned novels into masterpieces. However, the guy was superior to the task. He had a tremendous pride in his 4 sons, enjoyed cricket on Sunday afternoons, and made terrible puns at dinner parties. He lived in a book-filled home where every conversation felt like a play in rehearsal, got married twice, and fell in love with Sabrina Guinness late in life. He valued curiosity and detested sentiment. Even in his 90s, he continued to attend every opening night, whisper comments from the back row, and argue with new playwrights about semicolons. The National Theatre turned down the lights this morning. Broadway will come next. The true tribute, however, is more subdued. In living rooms when someone quotes Arcadia and the world suddenly makes a bit more sense, in classrooms where students learn that language can bend time, and in rehearsal rooms where actors recite his words for the first time and experience the magic. Tom Stoppard showed us that despite the absurdity of existence, the impossibility of love, and the absurdity of history, everything is connected by the most exquisite and delicate thread of words. He taught us to examine the bright, laugh at the dark, and never stop asking, what if? Born Tomáš Straussler in Zlín, Czechoslovakia, on July 3, 1937, he and his Jewish family fled the Nazis in 1939, first to Singapore and subsequently to India after Singapore fell. When the Japanese sunk the ship carrying British civilians, his father Eugene, who had stayed behind as a volunteer doctor, perished. The youngster who had previously replied to Tom Munn became Tom Stoppard in Darjeeling after his mother Martha married British officer Kenneth Stoppard in 1945. He first spoke Czech and then English. Every play he ever wrote would revolve around this idea of various identities, language as both a haven and a masquerade, and history as a play that is constantly reinventing itself. He was a calm, intelligent youngster who came to England at the age of 9. He never really recovered after discovering theater at his Nottingham school. He gained experience writing quickly, humorously, and neatly while working as a regional journalist for a few years before making his stage debut in London in 1966 with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. The play, which was written in a white fever at the age of 28, took 2 minor courtiers from Hamlet and put them front and center while they were confused, contemplative, and waiting for a narrative that never fully materialized. It debuted in a church hall at the Edinburgh Fringe, moved to the National Theatre, then Broadway, and instantly made Stoppard famous. At 31, he received his first Tony Award. He didn't ever slow down. In Travestis 1974, a butler served tea while Lenin, James Joyce, and Dadaist Tristan Tzara debated art and revolution in the same Zurich drawing room. The world was given the best play ever written about love, language, and the fear of using the wrong words to express the wrong emotion in The Real Thing, 1982. The most exquisite drama ever written on mathematics, gardening, chaos theory, and the heat death of the universe, often all at once, is Arcadia, 1993. The Coast of Utopia trilogy, 2002, made 19th century philosophy feel like a thriller by following Russian philosophers over 4 decades and 3 continents. His late opus, Leopoldstadt, 2019-2022, followed a Jewish family in Vienna from 1899 to 1955. It turned out to be the most intimate work he ever wrote, a reckoning with the history he had spent a lifetime learning about. In 2022, at the age of 85, he continued to rewrite lines in the prompt script's margins during tech rehearsals, earning him a 5th Tony Award for Best Direction of Leopoldstadt and a record 4 Tony Awards for Best Play. Hollywood made an unsuccessful attempt to claim him. He contributed uncredited polishes to everything from Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith to Indiana Jones, and The Last Crusade. He also penned the screenplays for Empire of the Sun, Brazil, and Anna Karenina. Shakespeare in Love, 1998, a picture so glamorous that even the Academy couldn't resist, earned him and Mark Norman an Oscar. The crowd erupted when he thanked William Shakespeare for all the good bits. After accepting the statuette at the age of 71, he only ever directed 1 movie, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, 1990, starring Tim Roth and Gary Oldman. He later described it as the most fun I never want to have again. In 2012, he turned Ford Madox Ford's Parade's End into a perfect 5-part BBC series, reenacting the romance between Benedict Cumberbatch and Rebecca Hall. However, the theater was always at home. He authored a dozen quotation books worth of aphorisms in addition to 40 major plays, several one-acts, translations, adaptations, and radio dramas. He cherished the ideal sentence, discourse, and cricket. Despite accepting the knighthood in 1997 with a shrug and a smile, he detested interviews, sentimentality, and being referred to as Sir Tom in public. He had 4 sons, Oliver, Barnaby, Will, and Ed, who produced 9 grandchildren he loved and spoilt with awful puns. He was married twice, first to nurse Jose Ingel, 1965-1972, and later to actress Miriam Stoppard, 1972-1992. He fell in love with Sabrina Guinness in his 70s, and the 2 of them lived contentedly in Chelsea with dogs and literature till the end. He worked every day in his last years. He got up at 6, wrote in longhand till noon, went to the corner cafe for the newspapers and a flat white, and then revised in the afternoon. He was working on a new radio play and debating commas with his editor even in the final months when his sickness kept him primarily at home. He confided in friends that he was merely curious and had no fear of dying. He stated last month, "I've spent my life writing about people waiting for something to happen. As it happens, that's the last curtain. Really quite elegant. The curtain collapsed this morning. The National Theatre has already said that it will turn down the lights this evening. Tomorrow Broadway will come next. Tributes are being planned by every major theater in the English-speaking world. However, the real tribute is already taking place in classrooms, bedrooms, and rehearsal spaces where new authors are learning for the first time that ideas can sing, that language can dance, and that comedy and tragedy are only 2 sides of the same beautiful coin. The universe is chaotic, Love is unattainable, and history is a disaster, yet somehow, magically, everything is related, everything important, and every moment is worth investigating with wit, wonder, and compassion, as Tom Stoppard taught us. Tonight, the playhouses are darker. However, the words are still there, brilliant and unadulterated, just ready to be spoken out loud by the next inquisitive mind. I'm grateful, Sir Tom. You always own the stage.